Hi, this is Alexander Van Stone, and welcome back to Van Stone Virtual Productions presents Unreal Engine for Musicians, Part 6. In this final installment of our tutorial series, I will be showing you how to export both your background and foreground sequences from Unreal Engine 5.3 and lining everything up and doing your basic green screen and audio mix in Adobe Premiere. Hope you learned something, and thanks for watching so far. Okay, so jumping back in on the tutorial, I just filmed myself performing the song, and so I recorded that on video, reference monitor, as well as my audio recorder. So the next thing we're going to want to do is to export our uh, foreground plate. First off, we want to grab our bass dude here and just get him out of the shot. A lot of times what's easy here is just on your z-axis, go to -500, and he's gone. That way I can have actual me in the shot. I'm going to go ahead and hit G so all of our little widgets go away. First thing I want to do is, see, we have our whole animation here. I'm going to go to my legacy. Oh, this is set up to movie render queue. So these three dots here next to the little clapper slate, change this to movie scene capture legacy. That's what you're going to want to do. This is at least my workflow. I think you can get higher quality images the other way, but just me coming from video editing rather than game development and cinematics, this is what I gravitate to. So we are going to, we don't need any audio because it's just loops. So we are going to output image format, video sequence AVI, and we want advanced. Okay, so we want custom here on the sizes. So now if we go back to our camera, we want, let's see, we want our width to be 1080 and our height to be 1920. For this, it's just going on social media, so I'm really not concerned about doing a big 4K export. It's just not worth the time and the hard drive space, in my humble opinion. So the next thing I do here is I make sure that this is routed where I want it to be routed. So that's going to be there. And I'm going to go ahead and capture my movie. It's going to save everything. And now we can see over here, this is the project rendering out frame by frame. So I'm going to speed this up in the tutorial because this is like a 5-minute video, so this is probably going to take maybe 20-30 minutes to render. If I'm lucky, maybe only 10. We'll see. And then next up, we are going to pull that blue screen back in, and we are going to render another version of this exact same sequence with all the same keyframes and everything, with the blue screen between the foreground elements and everything, just behind the foreground elements, so that we have a clean comp of just them. And then from there, we're going to take those two AVI files, and we're going to work on doing the composite in Adobe Premiere. Okay, so we finished rendering our plate with everything in it. So the next thing I want to do is I'm going to go over here to where it exported. I'm going to double click it, and this is our render. That's looking pretty good. So the next thing, as I had mentioned, is going to be bringing in that blue screen. So I'm going to go ahead and jump out of pilot mode here, and I'm going to close this. Now I'm grabbing my blue screen. We're going to come in right there, and let's just rotate this guy and make him nice and big. Essentially just cover everything up. Now let's jump back into our camera actor and see, now we're going to have a nice clean composite on this. So go ahead and hit G, select something else, hit G, get rid of my widgets. Now I'm going to go back to my root movie render queue, and we're going to call this CGFG export as our file name. Everything should be good with that with the same settings. So we're going to go ahead and hit Capture Movie, save selected again. It's going to save our project. And okay, now we're running into a weird thing where I'm going to go ahead and stop the capture because our blue screen is colliding with other assets in some weird way. So let's go ahead and just move this guy back a bit. And see here, like optically it all looks the same. But now if I go here to my render queue, and we'll call this the added to the end of this, just in case we have like a ghost file from the canceled render. See how this looks as it goes. All right, so our tablecloth is not rendering in the right place. So I'm making an executive decision right here. I'm selecting the tablecloth that is a physics actor, and I'm just going to delete it. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to render this sequence with just these foreground elements here again, and then I'm going to add a 3 to this in case of ghost files. And then we're going to go ahead and capture. Now, because I've removed this, even though this is going on top of other things, there's a chance we'll see artifacts as I move around in the midground. So the next thing we're going to want to do is to re-export this with the blue screen gone again. And that way we have it consistent, where here we have no tablecloth. And I feel like this natural wood texture here looks great, serves the same purpose. Oftentimes in Unreal, if I run into something where there's one thing where I'm like, this might take an extra day or two of troubleshooting to make it work, like it's easier to just delete it and get the thing done. There are so many little details and things you can add in Unreal Engine that it's very easy to just go down a rabbit hole that takes like way more hours than you expect it to. And so I think the name of the game is just being efficient and picking out like what are the core things you're trying to accomplish in your animation or your video or cinematic or whatever you're making. And just hone in on those things and try to remove anything extraneous whenever possible. Okay, so we have exported our foreground element, so we're just going to look at that ABI real quick. This is looking pretty good. Now, one thing here is the blues here are not too far off from the blues back here, but because this is a straight line right here, when we're doing our compositing in Premiere, I can create a mask that goes right along this edge of the table, and then we'll still composite everything right around our ravens here in the foreground. So I'm not worried about it, and again, if I had used green rather than blue here, this would have like a green hue to it. And if you think about a lot of visual effects movies that were popular, like being made during the early 2000s, there's just so much green halo and green in the shadows of things. And we still see it in a lot of big blockbusters today, but I think it was a little more prevalent as the analog and digital technology was kind of intersecting with each other in the way that it was 20 years ago. Okay, so I'm going to close that, and next we're going to go ahead and go Back here in Unreal, our cube that is our blue screen, let's go ahead and do what we did with our guy before and just give that a negative 500. I made this really big, so I'm going to change the scale down. Just make it a 1 by 1 by 1 cube. Oh. And then I'm going to... Now that's gone. So here we can see this. Now we are ready to do our next one, which is going to be CGBG export 1. So this is just redoing what we did earlier, now that we've gotten rid of that tablecloth. Okay, so we see this rendering here. I'm not going to make you guys watch the whole time this renders, but you kind of get the idea. And see, without the tablecloth, just the way all these meshes intersect with this tabletop, it's a lot easier. Great, so we got this going, and then next, now that we have all of our asset, I'm going to have all my assets imported, and then we're going to jump over into Adobe Premiere. All right, so I have my sequence all done here in Adobe Premiere, and I'm just going to walk you through it pretty quick because this is more focused on the Unreal Engine rather than the nonlinear edit part of this process. So I have my composition here. I'll play it for a little bit. So we can see all of our elements moving here and everything comped in pretty nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and make all of these things invisible. And this bottom layer, this is what we were seeing in the 17-inch Feel World monitor during things on the day as I was lighting this and shooting it. So this is really helpful that if you have like a whole feature or a whole music video or TV show's worth of comp shots and you don't want to be going through and like rendering every little thing, like this is really nice for having as a proxy for getting your edit going at scale. And then you can just kind of replace those elements later, especially if you have time code baked in or a slate clap, something like that, or hand clap even. So I'm going to go ahead and make this invisible, and the next thing I'm going to show is this is our CG background export. So you can see, we even see all our foreground elements here moving. We got our deer, we got our fox, we got our guitar lady, we got our robot. Next, I'm going to add my green screen element here in this foreground. And then to give you an idea of what I'm doing to accomplish this, I'm going to go ahead and double click this, and then over here in our effects tab, let me walk you through how this works, is if I turn the Ultra key off, so I cropped up here just because you see a little bit of corner of my green screen there. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that crop back on, and that's only about a 10% crop on this. And then down here, we're not even going to see this, so I didn't even have to bother cropping it. And then here we have Ultra key. Now, Ultra key has a lot of different options. This is an eyedropper that lets you pick where you want the green to be. I'm just going to go ahead and go Z, so it's back to what it was. And then you just have all of these constraints, and a lot of it just comes down to noodling with it and making it look nice. Now, the thing that's going to make your life way easier, whether you're doing green screen or blue screen or doing a plain white background or a plain black background, is getting a consistent f-stop from a diffuse light source across that whole background. Now, if it's a black background, you want that dead black at least 2 f-stops below what the exposure of your key light side of your subject is. Now, if you're doing green screen, I recommend trying to light maybe a stop above what your subject is going to be. So it's also what tends to work nicely for this stuff with, I'm using GVM LED lights, is doing 5,000 Kelvin for the color temperature, and then being really low down about like 10 or 15% on the light, maybe 2 of the lights. What I did for this is 2 lights cross-shooting on the background, I believe. No, for this I had the light slung overhead on the C-stand that was holding up my green screen. So yeah, you can just go through here, mess with your contrast, and then you have things down here like choke, soften. I'll just kind of move this around, and you can see this kind of messes with the edge of it. And the tolerance and pedestal kind of impacts all of these things. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to jump up here to our foreground element. So you can see our birds are perfectly matching up because we had the exact same in and out from our renders for our background and our foreground element. So you can see they're just, I'm able to just use snapping and line them up here in Premiere. So it's not any big timecode thing at all. I'll go in here and I just use that Ultra key one more time. And I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. And I have two of them on. I'm not sure why I did that. Let me look real quick. So, that's why. So if I turn both my Ultra keys off, you can see that there's some shadows here with this lantern that are a darker shade of blue than the rest of this. So here, rather than selecting green with the eyedropper, I've just selected blue. And then I've gone through with all these constraints and just kind of noodled on them until I got something I thought looked decent. And I just did a second one of these Ultra keys as a pass for that little, you can see like the little blue shadows there, that when I have the secondary Ultra key filter, it runs that. So then I'm able to just go to my export tab and send my video out. And there you go. That's how you make your own Unreal Engine music video in vertical video with moving humanoid and animal background actors with it. I hope you learned something. If there's a better way to do something that I'm doing here that could be faster that I don't know about, feel free to leave it in the comments. Thanks for taking the time to watch. I can't wait to see what you guys make. Then one last thing I wanted to go over was what I did for my audio. You know, this is a video about making music videos, so let's jump in on that. So, as I said, the Zoom H4n recorded two different two-channel stereo tracks. One was my reference audio, which I'll go ahead and play this. That's the original track. And so I just have a stereo signal from my iPad that was going with 1/8" cable into the back of the Zoom H4n. So I know that that's going to have the same in and out point. So kind of like I was saying with the renders, where I'm not having to deal with timecode, I can just line these guys up. Now, I made 2 copies of my selected take of the other one that has my SM57 Shure microphone 2 feet in front of my 40-watt Rumble combo amp. And then also the XLR DI out. And so the way I mixed these in to just have a fuller sound is if I go over to my effects controls on this first instance of this take, I filled the left channel with the right, so now I have both channels are the selected track of this. So if I play this, let's see if I can tell. That, to me, sounds like it's the XLR DI out. And then I just did the opposite of, and then I just did like some basic tube modeled compression and EQ there that were just some presets. Then down here on the other instance of that same take, if I go into effect controls, I just did the opposite of filling right with the left, and then I added my compressor and my EQ again. Yeah, see, that's the amp mic. And then if I go ahead and turn solo off, you can hear them all together. So yeah, there you have it. It's a pretty simple setup, and you know, this is kind of thinking of this as doing my own little like in-studio live-to-tape setup, as opposed to this being like a final studio version of a song. So this is more of like if you're doing like a play-along video with vocals or your instrument along to a cover song or your own track. But, you know, obviously you could be just doing all of this to playback if you wanted to as well. All right, well, good hunting, and once again, can't wait to see what you guys make.